have to put traits in your species to try to make it amazing and get your population up?
Is it dominant species or evolution?
Evolution.
Interesting. Anybody else? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you actually got it?
Yeah, we like all pitched in and got it.
Oh my gosh, I actually mentioned this in the, it's a ridiculous. Who's seen Kingdom Death Monster? Kingdom Death Monster is a ridiculous game. It's just ridiculous.
I saw someone put that on Tabletop Simulator.
Oh gosh, oh gosh. You know what? It just doesn't do it justice because the miniatures really contribute to the game. The miniatures are so beautiful.
Yeah.
I considered doing it, but I don't want to dump $200 on a game. Like that's crazy. Like they had Cthulhu Wars with these big, huge. Like, No. We also got that. No. So my name is Jay. I'm probably going to be different than a lot of the other speakers that have been. I'm not going to be super technical. I didn't know what I was kind of coming into, so I kind of created this. And I realized that you guys have played board games, which is great. But I have a very diverse background, and I can totally use that. You can totally pick my brain for that. I'm currently a game designer and an instructor at the Art Institute of California Inland Empire. I run their club, their game club. With a little bit about me, I've been playing games for like over 30 years, and if you can look at me, I'm 42. That's the Asians in me, right? All the Asians are awesome. They're going to look like 12 when they're 80. So that's board games and card games and like video games. Like I started with the Atari, and I've pretty much worked my way up. I've been a college level game design instructor for almost 7 years, teaching basic design in one of my classes. The big final assignment is to create your own board game. Designing it from the ground up, from scratch, getting materials, and going through the QA process and gameplay, and even trying to pitch it. Some of my students have created games that I believe were good that I actually let them pitch to a board game company. I've actually worked in the video game industry. So when I started, I was QA at Blizzard. For a small game, World of Warcraft. Have you guys heard of it? Indie game. It's a small one. I don't know if anybody guys know about it. So I did QA. After I graduated, I was an animator. I worked on Grand Theft Auto 4, SmackDown vs. Raw, some expansions, and then I decided to teach. So I've taught 3D animation. I've taught game design, and so I've done a lot in the industry. I've been a mentor to the students that have passed through me. I pretty much see all my students through to the end. I've taught classes like game prototyping, project management. I've done all those things. So I published my own card game called Conquest of Kismet. Not a very popular game, but I did it mainly to say that I could. I've been very fascinated with like card games, and I guess to me, I didn't think that I actually could, and so it was more of a challenge to me to say that I actually did it and to prove to just kind of use as an example. I really wanted to do it to show as an example to my students. So I created a game, Conquest of Kismet, and it released September 2015. And I don't know everything. I'll be honest right now. Like someone said, "Hey, you know this game?" No, sorry, I don't know every game out there, but there's so many games that get released every year. That's like, I think last year was like over 5,000, right? I say over 4,000 every year. That's just board games. And that's like a lot. To try and keep up with a lot of those is pretty daunting. To play them is even more daunting. I've heard of it, but I haven't played like Kingdom Death Monster. I just don't have the money to spend to like buy this big thing that's gonna sit around. And then you gotta get the right crowd because you have to spend a considerable amount of time to play the game, right?
Just building the models.
And it's ridiculously punishing. It's like stupid punishing. Oh, I just came in, I have a stick. And you can fight this lion.
Yeah.
Okay. So why am I doing this? I kind of want, if you haven't already, create an awareness of board and card games that just kind of give you the see what's going on in the world of board games and card games. show that it's a growing media. It is growing. It's actually something that people actually are investing more into. And games just have great benefits, and I know you've seen it just by playing with each other. Games are diverse, and if you think games are just board games are just boring, I got a lot to show you. And create a possible alternative for design. So if you feel like you're a designer, right, that wants to design games, and some of you guys are programmers, some of you guys are business majors or whatever. Video games is not, you could do a lot in the video game industry, but games encompasses so much, and there are avenues and ways to be successful in that, right? So, basic terms, some of you guys already know this stuff. I didn't know what kind of crowd I was getting into. So analog is just referring, not digital, referring to card or board games. A deck building game. Who's heard of a deck building game? Anybody? Okay. Deck building game is a game that starts where players have a small deck of cards that's usually the same. It's weenie. And then you basically buy cards and put them in your deck, and it grows as it goes along, as the game goes along. So you're basically building your deck as a game, deck building game. A living card game. Who's heard of a living card game? Oh, so few of you have, right? What's a living card game?
Like a game that where like the entire card game base is in one box and it's all in one set. So like Netrunner, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So a living card game is an alternative to what we refer to as collectible card games or trading card games, like Magic, right? Magic has a business model where you buy a base set and then you buy like boosters, and the boosters will have like a rare, some uncommons, and a bunch of commons, right? You know what I'm talking about? And that's a business model that keeps an even revenue stream for, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But living card games, instead of just giving you random, they just give you all the cards for the set, for the expansion, and they give you the multiple, so you don't have to hunt down the multiple. So it pretty much puts everybody on an even scale as far as like skill is concerned. Ameritrash or Ameritrash, who's heard of this term? Ameritrash? You see this kind of floating around. It basically refers to games that are just typically American in origin and usually revolve around PvP. So if you're like directly conflicting somebody, like a fighting game or something like that, it may be under an umbrella called Ameritrash or Amerithrash. If people don't want to call Ameritrash because that kind of knocks Americans, right? And that's my daughter. Euro game. Anyone heard of Euro game? Euro? What's a Euro game?
Generally, it's a board game more about resource management than about
Yes.
fighting people.
Resource management is something that I see in a lot of games. Typically, the thing when I see Euro games, it's usually like you're kind of building your own little thing, right? And there's like not really much like conflict as far as like there may be a little bit, right? You may be conflicting with other people, but it's not. Your focus is mainly building your house, basically. And at the very end, you're comparing, victory points or whatever. It's pretty much it is an economic game, but many games have economics in them. So. Again, these are like general umbrellas that they're not exclusive to specific terms, and they're just generalized, and that's kind of, people are always making games that are different, and that's the beauty of the game industry. The beauty of the game industry is that people, and you are encouraged to, create something that's different than everything else. What kind of games are being played today? Games like Cuphead. Who's heard of Cuphead? Right? That's about to come out. It's a game that looks like 1920s cartoon.
Was it not a hand drawn?
Huh? Yeah, it's like it looks hand drawn, right? It totally looks hand drawn. But why do people, gravitate towards games like that? Because it's different, right? It's different. It looks different. It may play different. It's a hook, right? So we're constantly pushing the boundaries of what we consider games, right? And that's the awesome thing about it. And so terms will change. Many games fall into the same subcategories. These terms you may run into in the board game world, and then some games may be interpreted differently. So, the first point I'm going to say is games are everywhere, and you obviously know this one, right? So, this is Target. You've been to Target, you've seen this stuff, right? They're not longer relegated to dark sections of the Toys R Us. You guys know this stuff. Again, I don't know who's coming in. but you will, things like Cards Against Humanity, if you play Cards Against Humanity, like pretty much everybody has, right? Joking Hazard, who's played Joking Hazard? Joking Hazard is the game that is from no, it's not Oatmeal.
Cyanide and
The Cyanide and Happiness, right? Yeah, and you're creating like a comic strip out of that. I think that one's got a little more legs than Cards Against Humanity. Okay, so from 2012, just from 2012 to 2016, this is in the billions, right? The game industry, it's not just the video game industry that is growing, it's games as a whole. There, again, like I said, there's thousands of games being released every year. 1.2 billion is the latest. That's a lot. Target exclusives, Codenames, we've seen Codenames, right? I have it up there. Codenames, Deep Undercover, Machikoro, which was an original. The original was called Machikoro. This is the Target exclusive one. Oregon Trail. I don't know if you guys, any of you guys remember Oregon Trail, the video game?
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because like you guys, oh, Oregon Trail, I remember the colors. Like, no, when I played it, it was like green and black. It was so like primitive. And of course, it's been revised. Who's played Ticket to Ride? Anybody? Ticket to Ride? Gosh, you guys, everyone's been playing video games, board games. It's great. Many of these iterations have only come out as early as last year. So these games aren't just like games that are like Risk or like Monopoly that have been around for like tons of decades, but like games that have only been out less than a year are already making it into like the Target shelves. So it's happening. While games themselves have been around for a long time, I believe it's irrelevant. This game that changed the way we looked at entertainment, and that game is Magic. Okay, who's played Magic? Anybody about Magic? Okay, Magic is a great game, right? What I think a lot of people don't understand is that before Magic, there weren't any collectible card games out there. Magic really turned the tide in making games a viable resource of income. And what it did things like it combined the collectability of baseball cards. So back then, like, I don't know if anybody is older than like 30 something, 36, 35. Anyone older know about that? I'm 42, so I remember what it was like before, like that. Things like baseball cards were like super popular, right? And baseball cards used to be part of they used to be part of backings for like candy, right? How would people learn about their favorite baseball stars? And they would put it on the candy, just like things like dots. They're on that cardboard back, you know. Kit Kats are on that cardboard back. And so what they would do to advertise, they didn't have internet or anything like that back then. They would put like, you know, stats of the players, and the people at the baseball stadiums would like, hey, I understand what's going on now, right? Instead of going to the internet, they don't have that back then, right? So, you know, a card like that, that's a big route that can run in upwards of like hundreds of thousands of dollars for baseball cards, right? And so what Magic did is it actually created a business model that allowed for a steady stream instead of one-offs, right? So again, I talked about how boosters were, like you have a rare card, you know, uncommons, and then you have a bunch of common cards, right? So it kept people like buying into this whole thing to try and get the cards that they need. And in a deck of like 60 cards, you would have like 4 maximum in a deck. People were trying to get these like multiples of any one card, and even that's changed so much like in the last 20 years. It was a cheaper alternative to video games. And I don't know if people have seen this chart here. It is, you know, each console, if they were inflated to today. And in some cases, they were like a lot of money. Like a 3DO was $1,000. I mean, whew, people would be rioting if any console was like over $500 nowadays. But people spent that much money on these consoles, and card games like Magic provided a cheap alternative, right? So, not even, again, like Monopoly, and some of you guys, Like again, some of you guys have played these games, so, or Catan. There's a bunch of different types of games out there. Superhero, like Dice Masters. Has anyone played Dice Masters? It's a really cheap, really fast kind of game. Expansions are $1. It's really, really cool. I've put out some games here. Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's a cooperative game where you're fighting against like a villain, like you're a superhero and you have certain superpowers. Heroes Wanted, which is actually right there, right? It's played on a board that looks like a headline. So it's like, hey, that's kind of cool. You're on the headline. You're literally creating the headline as like, as part of the board. Marvel Legendary. Has anyone heard this one? Legendary. Okay, it's a deck building game that involves superheroes. I'm not really particular because this one because it's a really huge setup. You got to set this thing up really big. Horror games. Arkham Horror. I have right over here. Betrayal at House of the Hill. Who's heard of this game? Anyone heard of this game? Play this? Play this? Okay. Imagine going into a haunted house and you don't know what's going to happen in the haunted house. That's literally what Betrayal at House on the Hill. And then someone at some point is going to be the betrayer. You could be the betrayer, you don't even know it. But at some point, the betrayer is chosen and then the game changes. Completely different. It goes in a completely different direction. It's a great game. King the Death Monster, we were just talking about that, right? It's a game that was on Kickstarter and it retails for, I think it's retailing, if you can find it, for like $400. But if you bought it through Kickstarter, it's like $200.
Yeah.
And you got all these miniatures. It's a super crazy game. Arkham Horror created a card game just recently. Ghost Stories is a cooperative game. Sci-fi games like Android, we were talking about Netrunner, right? That's a really crazy game. Core Worlds I have here. This is a new one called Star Wars Destiny, which combines cards and dice. And if you didn't like cards and dice, there's Imperial Assault, which and if you don't like miniature like people, you can go X-Wing. Or if you don't like X-Wing, you can do Armada, which is the big capital ships. And if you just feel like you want something that's more epic than that, there's Star Wars Rebellion, which is like systems and trying to find the rebel base and super crazy. So like, if there's a game out there, you can find it. Zombie games like Dawn of the Zed is from the company that I released my game from. Zombicide, which is also on Kickstarter. Dead of Winter, The Walking Dead. Oh wait, if you don't like The Walking Dead the show, there's also The Walking Dead the game based on the comic book too. So if you guys want to go that way, the point is there's so many genres that there's definitely something out there for you. I would actually encourage you guys to explore that, right? That's what I'm here to do. I try and get people to play more board games because there's a lot of things going on, right? I think this is something where you guys would probably be more interested in, right? Who's thought of designing a board game or card game? Yeah, I mean, it's not embarrassing or anything like that, right? There are avenues to which people use, and Kickstarter is one of them. People have actually found a way to start investing their time into something that people will want to buy. Because before Kickstarter, how did you get a board game out? You had to go through a publisher, right? And that is really difficult, right? So, crowdfunding. So Kickstarter, according to Kickstarter, 2.8 billion total dollars have been pledged to Kickstarter projects. Okay. The biggest category, guess what the biggest category is? Games. Yes, games. By far. Of that 2.8 billion, 589 million has been in games. That's 21%. A big chunk. The next one down is design, with 572 million, 20%. Next is technology with 19%. And then it just goes down from there. Games by far dominate Kickstarter. And in the games category, it's analog games. They totally outnumber digital games by far, almost like 3 to 2 almost, right? So here's another chart from 538. It's successfully funded games by Kickstarter by month, and you can see even from as early as 2011, board games and card games weren't really popular on Kickstarter. And then nowadays, it's just skyrocketing through the roof. Some examples. How much did they make? Anybody? Yeah.
400,000?
400,000. Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Well, the $10,000 was their goal. How much did they actually make? They made 8.78 million when their Kickstarter ended. All right, let's do another one. Kingdom Death Monster. $35,000 was the goal. How much did they make? Just take a guess. Take a guess. Anybody? 400 million. Whoa, that's a wow. How about 2.04 million? Which to have people shell out $200 for a board game, that's insane, right? And this game took years for it to actually, release, because the designers were still working on the game, and it took them years to actually, get done. Joking hazard. $10,000 was their goal. How much did they make? 5?
2 million.
No, that's legit, right? Anybody else? 10 million. 3.2. Not bad, not bad. Dark Souls. Now you got a game that's based on an IP, right? So Dark Souls, the board game, was from Britain. So their goal was £53,000 or $63,000 in American money, right? How much did they make? 3.77 million. Oh my gosh, off a board game that's based on an IP, and how games based on IPs are awesome, right? Like I worked on a game called The Golden Compass, the video game, and yeah, right? Yeah, it was the worst game I've ever played in my life. I officially hate white bears because of this, right? Cards Against Humanity had a $4,000 goal. How much do you think they made?
$6.
Huh?
5 million.
5 million? Anybody else?
80 million.
80 million. Anybody else?
I'm going with 6 million.
6 million. Okay. Cards Against Humanity made their goal $15,000. Okay, note this. Note that back then it was 2011. Remember I talked about 2011, how things weren't as big back then? Okay. Cards Against Humanity really opened the door for all these other games, because what happened was that they funded, and then people started hearing about it, and then they just couldn't keep it up on their website. They just couldn't keep the stock up, because once the stock was in, it was gone within the day. And I was like part of that one, those groups that actually got their copy of Cards Against Humanity. Now you can find it at Target, and all their expansions, and the bigger, blacker box, and all those other things that you can get with it, right? Okay. So another thing that people try to go through is the game crafter, right? Because when we create board games, it's not just about just designing the game. I mean, it's more of engineering, right? Because not only are you creating a design, you are looking at the cards. How many cards you're going to be using? What's the graphic design on the cards? What are you going to put on there to, clearly, communicate to the player what they're going to do during the game? You also have to worry about box space. You have to worry about all these little things that engineers usually go through when they create a robot, right? It's just made for entertainment, right? So sites like the Game Crafter allow you to create, it's an alternative site that allows you to create and print and publish your game designs. I happen to know the owner, and so if a lot of people, what they'll do is, since they don't live near an area that they can print out these really nice cards, they will go through the Game Crafter, and then they'll print their prototype, and then they'll pitch the prototype to a publisher, or they'll use that as their example for a Kickstarter campaign, right? So since their launch in 2009, 113,000 projects have been on their site. And that has been, 7 years, 8 years? So that's not bad for a site that only does printing, right? 4,800 plus games self-published are actually available on their online store. Now, I'm not saying that they're the best games ever, but it's a way of, showing off your publication, right? And they have no signs of slowing down. Ooh. I accidentally put this on. Okay, so number 4, everybody's playing. This is Gen Con. Has anyone heard of Gen Con? Gen Con is the largest board game conference in the world. Right? It's second next to someone called Essen, which is in Germany. This is right before they open. So a lot of people are playing. People come from around the world, and I saw this personally, and they funnel in. It's ridiculous, and it gets really crowded. It's worse than like E3, if any of you guys been to E3. The New York Times says that in recent years, the momentum has accelerated. So a 4-day the tabletop game conference being held in Indianapolis took 15 years to grow to 30,000. Attendees from 20,000, but in the last 3 years they went from 49 from 30,000. So it's growing sharply. And last year it was 61,000. So there are people playing. It's out there, and people are totally getting into this thing, right? YouTube statistics. The Dice Tower, who's heard of the Dice Tower? It's like a YouTube channel that does reviews for board games and card games. They have well over 93 million views on their site. It's just a bunch of guys that just talk about board games. That's it. They're not like pretty or anything like that. They're just pretty plain guys, right? Sit Up, Shut Down has over 2.4. Geek and Sundry, which has tabletop, right? 265 million views. That's a lot. Board Game Geek TV has over 8 million views. Over 4,000 board games and card games are released this year. So, the market's out there. People are willing to play. Even locally, we have Strategicon, which happens 3 times a year. It's a board game, card game convention that you guys can go to. It's on LEX, right? Okay, so social benefits. This is the big reason why I believe we should get together and game more, because we've been in a digital society for so long. And I remember watching, the online kind of grow into its own. People, playing online, but there's only so much you can do online, interacting with each other, right? We were talking about Destiny earlier, right? I could play Destiny with a friend, but I'm not really playing with them. Is more of just kind of like side conversation with them, and not really, unless you're doing a raid, but even then you're not really getting into it. According to Health and Fitness, have fun, feel good. There's something tactile about, like hanging out with people, sitting down with them, and actually like playing a game, right? Laughing's been shown to increase endorphins, right? Family time. This is according to a website. There's a bunch of reasons. This one happens to deal with family. It creates tighter bonds with your family. Memory formation. Okay, people could attribute playing video games to memory and cognitive skills, but even playing a board game, you have to communicate. Right? You have to communicate what you're doing to your players, and that helps with communication, right? Reduces risks for mental diseases. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. Lowers blood pressure, speeds up your responses, reduces stress, grows your immune system. There's a lot of text here. Child development, like I have hundreds of board games that I am waiting to like show my kid. I'm just like, just can't wait. I can't wait to show her this one. It's a stupid game, right? But I can't wait to show my kid this one. That's going to be amazing. So therapy, treatment, but I do have a few more based on my experiences dealing with board games and card games. It builds social networks. The more I run one of the largest game club, largest club on campus, and it runs like 40, 50 people, but that's a small club compared, I guess this club is like 100 people, but then again, this is UCI. So while there may be disorders related to reactions, most of these people have no problems playing games. People with Asperger's or any other kind of social, you know, well, I don't want to say defect, but social differences, right? Getting them to play games is so much easier. You know, they start learning how to communicate more, right? And I've seen people grow from, you know, shy, you know, kind of introverted people to more outgoing and more social. Because let's just face it, out there in the real world, you're going to be talking, you're going to be networking with people. And how do you learn those networking skills? You learn them online, you can't really do that. People are usually yelling at you for being a noob, right? But like, when you're sitting in front of somebody playing a game, right, there is something about that communication and that interaction that allows you to learn, right? Learn more and practice that social skills, right? There are studies that show that you trust someone more when you play a game with them, even after they've beaten you like horribly, right? There's a trust that happens because you're trusting that person that's your opponent to give you, to provide you with a good time and each other with a good time, right? There's a certain amount of trust that happens, right? You don't really get that with like playing online. It's just matchmaking, right? Or like, oh, you're just on the same, you just happen to be on the same team. You don't know who that person is. You don't really talk about who or what they've been through or anything like that, right? It forms bonds. Inherent side effect of playing games that you tend to get closer with people that play with you, even if you lose badly. I haven't talked about that. Relationships were formed in my club that have been tight and have gone on to form more cohesive, coherent teams, right? You play together, you work together. When I was in the industry, I had this term, work hard, play hard, right? You work hard with your team and you play hard with your team, right? Because you formed a bond. I tell my students all the time, you never leave alone. You come in alone, you never leave alone, right? Because when you're out there and you're trying to find a job, like I'm pretty sure everybody here has been like, you know, listening to people that have been talking about how to get a job or what to do in your, whatever, you know. The fact is, he may get a job out of all of us, but what are they gonna tell him? Hey, we're looking for an artist. You know someone that's gonna be an artist? Exactly, he's gonna be looking to you guys, right? You want those bonds because you don't want to leave here alone. You've got to be tight with each other, okay? In conclusion, really quick, right? Games are everywhere, all kinds of genres. I just spelled out games. I know, right? It's like clever, right? We've dedicated our lives to games, right? Because we love games, right? If you ask like someone like Michael Phelps, like, why do you swim? What is he gonna say?
Because he likes it.
Because I love swimming, right? If you ask like Ben Roethlisberger, right, Steelers quarterback, why do you play football? What's he gonna say? I fucking love football. I love football, right? You have to have the mindset here when you're going through this program. Like, I love games. Like, you got to be like whatever it takes, right? I was working. I told you I worked at Shiny and I worked on the Golden Compass, right? Like, there were tons of times I was sitting there playing this game. I fucking love this game, right? But I love games, right? Even when I was testing for World of Warcraft, I was like, this stuff's boring. But I have to because I love games. That's what's going to push you through the hard times, right? We love games, and that should be the basis of why we do what we do here. If it's going to be for money, I mean, there's all kinds of ways of making money, right? If it's for like a girl or a guy, you know how that goes, right? So you Sinjoy, wow. Anyway, that's it. I know that a lot of this information was probably stuff that you already knew, but for people that don't really play a lot of board games, I wanted to encourage you to kind of at least look into it, right? There's a lot of different games that they don't have to be like Monopoly or like Kingdom Death Monster level. You know, there's easy, fast games that are out there. You know what I mean? Rhino Hero is a kid's game, right? And it's just about stacking. It's like Jenga mixed with Uno. You're creating a building, and then at some point you're gonna put this little teeny tiny like wooden hero in the building, and then it's like about to topple, but sometimes you have to pull them out. You have to put them on another. It's crazy, but it's super fun. It's light. It's easy, right? One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Some of us have played that, right? Welcome to the Dungeon. Sushi Go. Some of you guys played Sushi Go Party or Sushi Go, and my wife loves playing it because it's just sushi.
Okay, I like it for many other reasons.
Well, no, you got it because you love sushi. Yeah.
I like
Okay.
it for the strategy, because you have to, like, if you mess up, it's on you.
Yeah, it is. So, we're gonna go into question and answer, but like you can ask me. I know we talked about board games, and I probably talked your ear off about it, but you can talk to me about anything because I've mentored a lot of people. I've been in the game industry, the video game industry. I know what it's like to go to things like Game Developers Conference. I used to take my kids every year to Game Developers Conference. I used to get them into E3. I used to get them into all kinds of places. But that's it for my presentation. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Yeah?
So you talked a lot about how playing games strengthens social bonds, and I totally agree, but I've also had experiences playing board games where people are like disinterested, not communicating a lot.
Yeah, and it's if you come in with the mindset that you're trying to learn, right? And there's going to be those type of people out, just like there's people out there online that are just dicks, right? There's going to be those people out there.
So do you think that's totally independent of the game, and it's just?
It's independent of the game. Yeah, it's independent of the game. It's just coming in with a mindset and having people that will play with you that you trust, right? And sometimes there's a lot of people there's strangers that come in, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want to. There's bad experiences with everything, but if you have the mindset like, hey, we're just in it to have fun, then it should be okay, right? I understand. I totally understand. I know what you mean by having like flip the table. You know, that's something that we all know that others about, right? So, anybody else? Yeah.
So I think of myself as both a programmer and a game designer, and I was wondering, what does an entry-level designer do, either for video games or board games?
That's a very good question. Okay, so what happens in design is that designers are usually either homegrown or they're picked out by people that are, imagine you're a business, right? You're a game design company. You're looking for a game designer. How would you find them? You would look for people that have either proven themselves, either created an independent title that has been very, very successful, or they've probably have entered a contest where they either won or finalist, right? You're looking for the best. You want the people that are going to push your company, right? So you have there's a lot of people that come through and give you advice about what you should do to be the designer. I'm telling you to look at it from the company's perspective. They're looking for the best. And if you can prove that to them, and sometimes you can prove that to them by saying, hey, I've created a board game and it got this rating and it got this, you know what I mean? Like you could, that's quantitative proof that you've done it, right? You can't just be some guy that just comes up off the street and says, I'm a designer. The company's gonna be like, right? They're not gonna they're not gonna take a second glance at you. You have to show them that you can do it. And they'll be able to. A lot of times this comes from people that are from, like I'll split usually what I do is I tell my students that like the game industry is kind of split into kind of two, very loosely, right? Like in the military there's NCOs and then there's COs, there's non-commissioned officers, which are like grunts, like the people that like come straight from high school right into like, the military. And then what they call commissioned officers, which are usually the guys with a degree, right? So in the game industry, I usually relegate those guys to people like programmers, right? Artists, right? Animators, right? That have gotten specialized like training for their craft. And then the people that are like NCOs or whatever are QA, right? QA GMs, right? And then they move up the ladder those people usually become producers, designers. Why? Because they're homegrown, right? They're not the people from the street. The company trusts them because they've been around with the company for a long time, right? Do you see? Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to be a designer, you really have to prove to a company that you're worth being hired.
Got it.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
So say a technical person goes in for a technical interview and they have examples of their code that they've had in their portfolio or their resume, or examples of what they've done before. As a designer, if you were to go into an interview, what types of things might you have in your portfolio
As a designer,
as a designer?
okay, designer usually has something that's that is already rendered. You know, like already like a finished goal. You have something that's already done.
Okay. Sorry. Maybe I'll clarify a little bit more. So, would they say have a breakdown or an analysis of why you made these choices in this one level, or say they played this one game that everybody knows about and they broke down this level, why they believe the designers made this
Okay,
choice?
so I believe that game design is an act of communication, right? Your game has to be able to communicate your design without you telling them, all right? So I tell my students that if a game comes out and the players don't understand the game, they don't know how to play the game, whose fault is it? It's the game design's fault, right? So like, yes, you want to present the game to them, but you got to give them enough so that they ask the question about it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, does that make sense? No.
Yes, it totally makes sense. But I think we missed each other with
Okay.
questions.
Sorry.
No, it's totally okay. Say, for instance, I'm going to talk about Super Mario Brothers, and I want to say, and I give them a thing that explains why I believe Miyamoto and his team made all those decisions, so that it gives them an idea. Oh, this guy knows how to break
Don't
down
do
a
that.
level.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because you're telling someone why someone wasn't successful. Does that say that makes sense? Like you're telling them, oh, this is how it would make it better, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Not necessarily make it better. Just say, oh, this is what that designer was trying to do, and this is how they tried to do it. Not necessarily give an opinion on.
I think that's a
whether
little.
or not.
I think that's a little too deep. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't go that direction if that
Okay.
if that was me. You know, you want to be able to communicate to the people that are hiring that this is what you can do apart from, you know what I mean? Does that
Okay.
make sense?
How might you communicate that you are communicating as a designer?
That either comes from experience. If you've done other projects before, that's come from experience from your resume, or that has to come from a game design that you've created that you've given them. You know, like if you're designing into a contest, right? And the contest you won the contest. Well, that should show them that you're able to, and then they'll ask you about your design, right? So if you were a company, right, what would they ask you? Would they want to know that? It's like if you were the company that
Yeah.
that you're hiring for, right?
Yes.
What do you think they would say?
If I was a good communicator or not?
Yeah. What would you think? You know, that's weird, right?
In a team?
I think what he's trying to ask is what are the typical questions of an interview for a designer position? Like how does an interview play out? For example, like what do the interviewers ask the
Oh,
interviewees?
okay. They'll usually give you tests.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll usually give you tests. They'll say, I just did a test for Naughty Dog not too long ago, right? For a game designer. They'll give you a test. They'll say X, Y, Z, A, B, C, do this in this much time.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. That's how you can show the way you design to them, and that's the easiest and fastest way for people to figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, with market growing, it's becoming hard to come up with new idea. And what's the easiest way to check whether your idea already exists on the market?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. That is almost an art form. It's almost an art form to figure out what's new and what's going to be a hook. You know, that I spend so much time trying to figure out what's going to be different about this game that doesn't look like or sound like anything else. There's so much research you can do, right? You can research to find what, you know, if what you're doing is the same as anybody else that's been out there, but you can only go so far, right? So at some point you're gonna have to ask people, right? You're gonna have to ask other people, hey, have you heard this before, right? You're gonna have to do your own little survey and ask them, you know, have you heard of this? Have you not heard of this? Or would you play this type of game, right? So in my class, I have this thing called, what they call is, there's a one sentence marketing description and a hook, right? If you can describe the hook to someone and they say, I want to play that game, that's the gold mine right there, right? So it's really not so much the idea as much as how it's presented, right? So like you can have a really unique idea, but if it's not presented correctly, then you know it's not going to really go anywhere, right? So let's talk about Cuphead, right? Cuphead. I just talked about it really quickly. I said it's a game that's got a style that looks like 1920s artwork, right? That hooks a lot of people. Already in your mind, you're thinking about that. Or the people that already heard of Cuphead know exactly what you're talking about, right? And so if you're not part of this big corporation where you can just like spit out the same crap over and over again in the sequels, it's a tough question. It's a tough question, and that you have to research that. You have to like play more games. You have to play as many obscure, crazy, weird games out there to see what's out there. You have to hunt down into the Xbox Live Arcade or the PSN or Steam to find games if they're similar at all. You know what I mean? How I approach it is that like I play every game. I look at designs and I'm like, okay, I put that on the board, right? And when I'm designing something, I look at this board. So when you go into like a wood shop, right? You see all these tools, but you're not going to use all the tools for a particular project, right? You're going to use certain ones. Just like in your mind, you play games, you have all these tools, right? If you played Monopoly for your whole life, what kind of game are you going to make? Monopoly. The more games that you play, the more diverse you know what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know it's a very hard question. It's a very, very hard question. How do you find what's unique? And it's a tough way to think. I would suggest try and hunt down, look at the Independent Game Fest, IGF, Independent Game Festival, GDC. Every year, there's like a list of all the games that like independent teams are making that are just blow your mind. And that a lot of them end up being like games that you see, like Portal was one of them, right? Fez was one of them. There's a bunch of games that Braid, all those ones came from like independent, like, and they're really, really, really like innovative. So that's the best I can answer. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
What's your favorite board game and why?
Right now, Blood Rage. Right now, this thing. Right now. Because it's a Norse mythology themed game where it's about conquering like an island, but you can actually win by dying. Like if you're like getting conquered all the time, you can actually manipulate so you're actually winning. So it's all about glory, like gaining glory. So in Norse mythology, if you go into battle, like if you go into, say Ragnarok is coming down and you die in Ragnarok, that's glory for your clan. And if you can maneuver that so that you're always dying and you play the right cards, you can actually win the game. So it's really cool. It's like Seven Wonders. It plays in 3 phases, right? And then the first one, it's like you got to get to know the game. You're like, okay. And the second phase, you're like, oh, okay. And the third game, it's like, oh, it's on, right? So it's kind of expensive. It's like $80. But it got signed by the designer, so. Well, anyway. But yeah, my favorite one right now is that. My favorite video game, you didn't ask that, but my favorite video game, Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger, Super NES, by far my favorite game. It did time so well, and they maneuvered it. You can do stuff in the past, it affects the future. It totally worked for that time, and it was amazing. So, I mean, there's other games like Bravely's, not Bravely's fault. There's other games that are like that now, but Chrono Trigger all the way. So, is that, okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I asked you this before, but I'll just say for the recording. Do you have any advice on managing politics amongst players? I guess just in general games, but also maybe a secondary question is any advice on creating interesting political games?
Okay, so the first question is about say that again.
Managing politics amongst players.
Managing politics amongst players. So I said that was difficult because you're going to bring your own personal opinions into a political discussion, right? Like already, like there's the whole Trump thing, right? And everybody's really hot. It's a hotbed issue, right? People have varying opinions on it, right? When you go into a political game, your opinions are going to come out no matter what. What I suggest is to keep in the back of your mind that it's not personal and that it's a game. That's what has totally coasted me right through, or else like I totally get mad at people and I lose friendships over certain games, right? The other one is how to create a political game.
An interesting
political game. Research is a big thing. Start small, because it can get really complicated. Start small with a very, very specific event, right? Create a game around one very specific event. And then once you realize what you're doing, you can grow bigger. It's like, who's painted miniatures? Anyone painted miniatures? Or built models? Anyone built models? Right? Was the first model the best model that you made?
It's Warhammer Orc.
Yeah, it was probably wasn't painted the best. It was kind of primitive, right? Like, right? How could you create a really good political game when the first game is going to be crap, right? You have to keep practicing, and then you get better and better. Because the second time you did a model, it was way better than the first one, right? My first model was like, had so much glue in it, and it was supposed to transform. It didn't, because it had so much glue in it. And that was back then where it wasn't a snap model. Like you actually had to glue shit together. Oh, man, it was bad. But the next model after that was way, way better, right? Because I knew, right? So you're going to learn things inherently through game design that you're going to carry over into other game design. So I tell people to start small. If you feel like you have something like, a lot of people come in and ask me, oh, I have this idea for a game, it's an MMO. Oh, okay, so you feel like crashing and burning, right? So, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have aspirations of building something like an MMO or a really big game like Mass Effect, but you have to start small. You learn a lot of things by making small games. And the more you continue to make small games, you can start growing and make bigger games. Again, it's practice. You practice your design, you get better at it. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. What do you think makes? What components do you think makes something the worst game?
What components make it?
Or what makes something a horrible game?
When you can't understand the game, like it's just when you did.
And what's the worst game you've ever played?
Shit. I don't know. Like a board game or a card game?
Board game.
Or a board game? The worst? Oh, okay. I got it. Okay. One of my students gave me a game, and I hope this game will never see the light of day because I got it, and I stuffed it in my garage, and I'll never ever show anybody unless like they're in my house. It's a game called Life as a Black Man. The most racially, politically charged game I've ever seen in my life. It is a very horrible game because all it is you start at the bottom. It's a grid, right? You are a black man that just turned 18. And you are choosing where to go in life, whether you want to be a preacher, a soldier, a gang member. Yeah, very, very stereotypical, right? And the gameplay was horrible because you roll a dice and it's a grid, so you can go anywhere you want to orthogonally. But what kind of game strategy is in that? And then there are points in the board where you pull a card. That's it. So yes, life as a black man. Right? Oh my gosh, that just it blew me away that this game ever existed, and it will never see the light of day in my garage. So
Did your student make that, or?
No. It was legitimately published by some crackhead or whatever. Like, and he made another game about pot, and like I don't know. Yeah, wow. And I heard rumors that game was going to be an app, and I was like, no. So, yes, that's the worst game I've played ever. I mean, even Monopoly is way better than that. And just Monopoly, at least you're doing something, and there's a theme to it. This one is just like so racially charged, it's ridiculous. So, but yeah, that's the worst game that I've.
So, what do you recommend to avoid when making a game? This is not really connected to, just in general. What do you say? What do you advise to avoid or to do when making a board?
Playtest. Playtest. I don't think some of you guys will start working for game companies, right? And some of you guys will work in QA. Right? You'll start off in QA. That's just the truth, right? So when you start off in QA, you will not understand how important your role is as QA until you become a designer. When you're a designer, you rely on QA so much because what QA is the last line of defense before the game comes out. It literally is. If you didn't find something in the game, it will go out with that error, right? So it is your job as QA to find those bugs and tell the devs so that they can fix it. So playtest is everything. If in a production cycle, 75% should be playtesting and tweaking, right? In a game company, what happens is that a dev team will create a build, what is called a build, right? And then they'll shoot it off to QA. And they'll be like, QA, here's the ball, which is the build. And then the QA will test through it, and they'll do what they call functionality testing, which is like, does it work, right? And then a lot of it may involve like charts, like, hey, does this weapon proc? Does this weapon show on your character? Does this weapon tink when you hit something? Does this weapon show as an icon? Does the icon make the correct sound? And those are just little dots, right? And that's QA, right? And that's functionality testing, right? So. I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, QA is about functionality testing.
Last line of
It
defense.
is last line of defense. So like I've played Destiny, and there are things in Destiny I'm like, there's no sound in that. Oh, no, that's the wrong icon. I've totally done that because you get used to that. You know, like when you drop through coins, there's no sound. That's a bug. That's a bug. But you know. Who am I? I'm not anybody. So, but yeah, as a designer, you rely on your game testers, and the game testers will not understand it until you become a game designer. All right. Anybody else? Thank you for sitting and listening to me. You guys could have easily just walked out, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much.